European colonization of the Americas actually began early in the 10th century when sailors from the modern-day Scandinavia explored and settled at first very limited areas in Greenland and then later in Canada. But it was not until the end of the 15th century that the colonization was drastically expanded. In 1492, the Genoese navigator and explorer Christopher Columbus inadvertently stumbled onto the American shores as he was trying to find a new trade route to the Far East. This was the beginning of great territorial expansion for several European countries. Later, other powers such as France also founded colonies in the Americas. Partly in North America, a large number of Caribbean islands, and a small coastal part of South America. Portugal colonized Brazil and controlled for some time territory in the northwest bank of the River Plate. Eventually, the entire Western Hemisphere came under the control of European powers, which caused a lot of changes to the landscape, population, and animal life. British colonization of the Americas began in 1607. One of the main purposes of the colonization was economical and religious. The British wanted above all to extend their empire and wealth throughout the world. The Mayflower was the ship which transported the English Puritans and Separatists to the Americas. There were about 102 men aboard the ship, but the exact number isn't known. This journey became a very important part in American history, as these pilgrims were to become the founding fathers of the modern-day USA. The Mayflower Compact was signed aboard the ship on November 11, 1620, by the Pilgrims, who were fleeing religious persecution back in England under King James, and was the first governing document of Plymouth colony.
On September 6, 1620, 102 passengers and 26 crew members left Plymouth in England to travel to the New World. They sailed on a ship called Mayflower to seek religious freedom. In December, they arrived in Cape Royds, present-day Massachusetts. In late December, the group landed in Plymouth Harbor, where they created the first permanent colony of Europeans in New England. They are today known as the Pilgrim Fathers, or just the Pilgrims. The separatists in England, Protestants who occupied extreme wings of Puritanism, were extremely critical of the Church in England, so they came to New England to live after their own belief. The separatists is also known as the Independents. We must consider that we should build as a city upon a hill. The eyes of all people are upon us. In John Winthrop's sermon upon the birth of Arabella, he spoke about how the New England should be the perfect example of the world to the other countries. And everything they do, the rest of the world will be watching and following along. They are upon the rest, and everyone is watching all the great things they do for each other and for the world, and specifically how God is always with them. Even today, they see themselves as a city upon a hill. They feel like they have to be a role model for the rest of the world. And in speeches even today, the sentence, "we should be as a city upon a hill, the eyes of all people are upon us," are mentioned. The founding fathers were the men who successfully fought the Revolutionary War, then signed the Declaration of Independence and drafted the Constitution of the United States. Among these men are John Adams, who was active in drafting the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson, who had a major role in the American Revolution and later became the third president, George Washington, who was the first president of the United States and who also had a critical role as the commander of the Continental Army during the American Revolution, Benjamin Franklin, who was a writer, diplomat, and accomplice inventor prior in the involvement of the American Revolution.
Samuel Adams was born in 1722. He was raised in a religious and political family, and that definitely had influence on his life. He graduated at Harvard College in 1740, and he would soon be known as an American revolutionary. His first big political step was in 1765, where he helped create a resistance to the Stamp Act, because he was a strong opponent of the British taxation, and that was the Stamp Act was all about, the taxation. His greatest and biggest act was in 1776, where he signed the America's Declaration of Independence with his second cousin, the U.S. President John Adams. And that concluded in the new 13 American colonies were no longer a part of the British Empire, and they were now independent. So, yeah, you could call him one of the founding fathers of the USA. Autonomy. It's like when you're living under your own rules and laws, and that did happen when the America's Declaration of Independence got signed, because USA got independent and was not ruled under the British Empire. Boston. The Boston Tea Party occurred the 16th December in 1773, and it was a political protest by the Sons of Liberty in Boston. And they were against the British Parliament's unfair and high taxes on tea. The way they protested is it all happened an evening. Meanwhile, Samuel Adams was holding a meeting near the Boston Harbor in the Old South Meeting House. Suddenly, 30 to 130 men from the Sons of Liberty stormed out, and they were disguised as Mohawks. They stormed out of this house, and they stormed 3 ships loaded with tons of tea. They emptied the ships for the tea and dumped it in the water. And the whole action was just caused because of these high taxes. But the outcome was the Intolerable Acts, which was a punishment against Massachusetts colonists who got taken away their self-government.
The Declaration of Independence was written in the summer of 1776 by a committee appointed by Samuel Adams. It was originally called the Unanimous Declaration of the 13 United States of America, since the term Declaration of Independence is not used in the document itself. The 4th of July 1776, it was approved by the Continental Congress. It declares that the then 13 states of America announced themselves independent from the British Empire, which they are at this point at war with. The states have always been part of Britain, but they are now 13 sovereign states. A new nation was formed, the United States of America. The Declaration is famously known for the phrase, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Though not to forget that another man, Abraham Lincoln, is also remembered for these words that he spoke in the Gettysburg speech in 1863. Manifest destiny was a widely held belief or mindset in the United States in the 19th century. The basic point of the idea is that American settlers are destined to expand throughout the continent and grow the land. It was a huge phenomenon throughout America, even though some did reject it. Even some big personalities, such as Abraham Lincoln, U.S. Grant, and a big part of the Whigs. Since independence had won the huge war and revolution in 1812, a huge spirit of nationalism swept America at this time, and it demanded more territory. To be exact, the idealists believed that the country was to stretch its boundaries as far as to the Pacific Ocean. They wanted to spread the civilization with the help of God. American exceptionalism is an American ideology based on equality, individualism, republicanism, and democracy. The ideology says that the development of the U.S. is exceptional compared to the development of other new countries. It is held by many American conservatives, and especially neoconservatives. The ideology has a tendency to overlook the, so to speak, bad history of the U.S., such as slavery, the treatment of Native Americans, segregation, and Jim Crow laws. Linked with that, it also has a tendency to point out what the Americans are very proud of, such as the Founding Fathers, the Constitution and George Washington, the Wild West, or even controversial aspects of American involvement in the World Wars. The US is supposed to be a shining example, and here we hear about the city upon a hill concept yet again. The US is to be an example to the rest of the world.